Here we go, 0 to 60 in the Continental GT Speed. We've got it in sport mode using the toggle selector right here. Traction control is off, floor the brake, floor the gas. It revs up to its 5,000 RPM limiter and off we go. Oh my God, that all-wheel drive is ridiculous. This Bentley goes 208 miles an hour, and as spec'd, it'll cost you $352,000. But it might just be the best luxury GT car of all time, and here's why. Under the hood of this gorgeous Bentley is a 6-liter twin turbocharged W12, making 650 horsepower and 664 pound-feet of torque. Yes, that's right, I said W12 and not V12, and there's a very good reason behind that. See, the W12 packaging is shorter in its design. That means it can be farther back in the engine bay for better weight distribution. But mainly it means the smaller packaging allows for more space for a front differential and all of the other drivetrain components, allowing this to be all-wheel drive, which results in a 0 to 60 sprint in under 3.5 seconds. The exterior of the GT Speed is elegant as ever, and there are some subtle design tweaks between this and the standard GT. We've got 22-inch wheels, speed graphics on the side. Optional is a carbon fiber exterior package. Standard things like these absolutely gorgeous headlights that you could get lost in. They look like luxurious crystals, and just taking a peek at this grille makes you feel wealthy even if you aren't. When a car can go 208 miles an hour, it's extremely important to have good brakes. That's why this one has been equipped with the optional carbon ceramic brakes, and they are out of this world. 440 millimeter rotors up front and 10 piston calipers. This vehicle stops so well, it's actually ridiculous, and it's one of the vehicle's strong suits that I don't think enough people talk about. When you've got a fast, heavy luxury vehicle, you've got to be able to slow down at high speeds, and the brakes on its other British luxury rival are nowhere near as good as these things. The Continental GT looks awesome from the side. I love this muscular line for the rear haunches, as well as this chrome strip, and the subtle little 12 to let you know it's got a 12-cylinder and not a lowly V8. The other thing I love is that there's no B-pillars, so if you roll down the windows in the front and the rear, even if you're in the rear seat environment, you get this massive open window to take in the outside environment. The rear of the GT Speed is very elegant. I love the active spoiler in its upright position, the oval exhaust tips, but it's actually got some hidden engineering back here. That's right, the GT Speed now has rear axle steering, which means at low speeds, the turning radius of this all-wheel drive behemoth is actually really impressive. And at high speeds, the rear wheels turn in the same direction of the fronts, which virtually enhances the wheelbase, making it even more stable at high speeds. The interior of the new GT Speed is absolutely breathtaking. The use of different materials, the fit and finish, how everything feels to the touch is as luxurious as it possibly gets. And might I dare say, it does feel fancier inside than a Rolls-Royce. The controls are really impressive as well. Check this out. It's got a rotating screen. So right now in its off position, it blends in with this nice black veneer. But if we go ahead and click the screen button with the car woken up, it will rotate and show us a digital display. But that's not the coolest part. To future-proof this car and make sure that in 10 years when graphics have gotten a lot better, if you click the screen one more time, you've got these gorgeous analog gauges. You've got a compass, a thermometer, and even a chronograph. Pretty cool stuff. I love the Alcantara wrapped steering wheel. Now we have an 8-speed automatic gearbox with paddles mounted behind the wheel that feel great to the touch. I love this aluminum kind of machined trim. It honestly reminds me of a Bugatti Veyron. In fact, the ethos of this car is similar to a Veyron and a Chiron in many ways, which we'll talk a little bit more about later on in the video. We've also got this gorgeous speed engraving in the seats. Look at these diamond patterns. I can't wait to share more about the interior. Let's hop in the back. Now, traditionally in these good-looking sports coupes, you've got absolutely no space in the rear, but that couldn't be farther from the truth in the Continental GT Speed. We've got these little cutouts in the Alcantara headliner that leave you with headroom. And if I pull this all the way back, I've actually got several inches of legroom as well. It's pretty spacious back here, and I'm gonna push this forward so you can see the rear seat environment. We've also got this little slider here with cup holders as well as USB charging. You can also take out this secret compartment I'm not quite sure why this comes completely off, but it's kind of cool and fancy. You've actually got a locked storage compartment back there. We've of course got those really cool windows. Press of a button, you can make those go down. And one of my favorites is this panoramic sunroof that gives you such a cool view, particularly from the rear. Behind the wheel of the new Continental GT Speed, and I am absolutely head over heels in love with this car for so many different reasons. The first of which is, I think it might be the ultimate daily driver. So we're gonna use this toggle to switch it over to comfort mode. Now, despite the fact that there's been some changes to make this a sportier ride than the standard Continental GT, it remains insanely comfortable in comfort mode. The air suspension soaks up bumps so well, it just wafts over the road, almost like you're floating above it. But unlike its other British rival, it's got some tricks up its sleeve in the performance department. If we shift it over one to the left, that's called Bentley mode, and that's a hybrid between comfort and sport. So it stiffens up the suspension when it feels it needs to, and it heightens throttle response when it feels it needs to. Kind of the perfect for everyday driving scenarios if you think you're gonna go a little bit quick in certain sections. Now, I love sport mode, firms up that suspension, tightens the gear changes. Now we've got that 8-speed automatic with paddles. The gear changes are 50% faster on the speed from the standard GT. That's a pretty large difference. When the suspension firms up, this thing has virtually no body roll whatsoever. And because we've got that rear axle steering, it feels so nimble for what its weight is. It actually almost doesn't make any sense. I first experienced their tricksy magic with the extended wheelbase Bentayga. It felt like almost like a car. But this has taken a luxury two-door and transformed it into a full GT sports car. And then of course, you continue flicking through the paddles and you'll reach that top speed of 208 miles an hour. Now, despite being heavy, I love how effective these 10-piston carbon ceramic brakes are. You actually feel confident pushing this through the turns, knowing that you can slow down once you've gained ridiculously high speeds. Because of that all-wheel drive system, the levels of traction are incredible as well. It's on P0 tires. I wish it had 4S's or even Cup 2s. I mean, this is essentially a supercar with a luxury focus to it. Its performance figures are ridiculous. Now, in today's day and age, 3.5 seconds to 60 doesn't sound insane. But I'm telling you, after that 60 miles an hour, and even the initial hit, it feels so much faster than that. All of that torque just seamlessly pulls harder and harder, and the top end from that W12 allows it to rip all the way up to 208 miles an hour. But we'll put it back into comfort mode and just cruise along. You could spend so much time behind the wheel of this. In fact, one of the days I've had this car, I spent 7.5 hours behind the wheel, just driving it all around, and I wasn't tired whatsoever. It feels like you could spend a lifetime behind the wheel of this car and not have any back problems or be bored of it whatsoever. We've got the upgraded 20-channel name audio system. That's the top of the line audio system. It sounds really good. It's got this active bass that kind of vibrates your butt, which is interesting. The standard audio system is fantastic as well. You can do optional ambient lighting in the interior, which is nice. Now, blind spots, there's virtually none of them. You can see around this vehicle so easily, it's ridiculous. Anyone could drive the Continental GT Speed. Just because it has 650 horsepower does not mean you need to be afraid of it whatsoever. If you don't put your foot down all the way, it's so comfortable to drive. And because it has all-wheel drive, it's not gonna just step out and slide and spin around and crash. Let's see, is my favorite road open? Awesome. This road has been closed for the better part of the last week because of the crazy rainstorms and rock slides have happened. But the good news is we can put this thing to the test a little bit more on some high-speed twisties. Now, the exhaust sounds good when it's in sport mode. The loudest the exhaust gets is on upshifts. In between the shifts, it makes this brat noise where you can really start to hear the exhaust. Sometimes on downshifts, you'll get these little crackles and pops, which is nice. Apparently, there's an optional Akrapovic exhaust that they developed in conjunction with Bentley. That's a quad exhaust setup that's louder. I personally would like that, but I can totally see how the traditional buyer, perhaps, of the GT Speed would like the small penetration of noise into the cabin, but also keep it pretty refined and classy in here. But certainly when you hear those little rumbles, it reminds you that, oh, by the way, the steering ratios have been tightened. We've got quicker steering. We've got more intense suspension. We've got that electronic limited slip rear differential in the back. And we also have that all-wheel steering for tons of grip and tons of confidence in the turns. This thing feels so stable at high speeds. It is absolutely ridiculous. What I would do to take this out on the Autobahn and actually reach that 208 mile an hour top speed. Maybe share this video with your friends. Let's make it go viral and we can approach Bentley with a Autobahn run video idea. That would be pretty cool. Fingers crossed anyways. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed this review. Like always, please browse the channel and subscribe if you're looking for the ultimate daily driver that has a more luxury focus than something like a 911 Turbo S or a McLaren GT. Two cars that are in a way competitors to this vehicle. Well, they claim they are, but almost not on the same planet in some regards. This is probably the most luxurious sporty car you can possibly buy. And it really does feel a bit like a Chiron for $3 million less. Yes, it's got 2 fewer turbochargers. Yes, it's got 1,000 or 950 less horsepower, but it still accelerates like hell. It's incredibly luxurious. It's got that GT cruiser feel, but it's sporty when it needs to be. And for a starting price of the high 200s, this one's 350 grand. It's certainly a better value proposition than a Chiron. Although I imagine if you're buying Chirons, you probably got one of these as well. All right, guys, 4 thumbs up. If I had 4 arms for the Continental GT, I don't want to give this vehicle back. Man, it's got my head spinning with how cool this thing is. All right, guys, see you next video.